Something is keeping track of what you believe. Not what you say, what you believe. For every person alive, all the time, without ever stopping. It has to, because the world you're standing in isn't finished. The inside of the Earth isn't there. The distant stars are compressed down to almost nothing. Whatever's under a microscope hasn't been decided yet. It waits until someone is about to look, then it fills that part in. Just in time, just deep enough. And if something slips, if you notice something that shouldn't be there, there's a director who can reach into your head and edit the memory before it ruins the run. Or rewind a few seconds and play the scene again, differently. You wouldn't know, that's the whole point. That's not a film. It was published in 2003 by a man at Oxford named Nick Bostrom. The word director is his. And it's the same man who spent the year since telling people that he did not show we're living inside it. So what did he say? He said there are 3 ways this ends, and at least one of them is true. Everybody argues about one of the 3. Almost nobody looks at the other 2. And when you do, the one everyone's frightened of turns out to be the one you should be hoping for. That's been sitting in the paper the whole time. You already know the version he didn't write. It goes something like this. The future builds billions of simulated worlds. Simulated people end up outnumbering real ones, so you're almost certainly one of them. Clean, confident. Sounds like maths. He spent 20 years trying to get that sentence out of people's mouths. The real one is stranger, and by the end of this, I think you'll agree it's worse. So here's what he actually built. A trap. At least one of these 3 things has to be true. 1. Almost no civilization ever gets to the point where it could build these worlds, and that one is not an apocalypse, which is exactly what makes it hard to look at. 2. They get there, and almost none of them ever do it, which means they work something out, separately. 3. Almost everyone with experiences like yours is already inside one. At least one. He doesn't say which. The argument genuinely cannot tell you which. And people always assume this is the brain in a jar. What if everything's fake? How would you know? It's the opposite of that. That one starts from doubt. This one takes your world completely seriously. The physics, the technology, the history, all of it. And then shows you that if you take all of it seriously, some of it can't be true at the same time. You're not being asked to doubt everything. You're being shown that you already believe things that don't fit together. Now, everyone who meets this looks at door number 3, decides that's the frightening one, and stops there. We're going to open all 3. And by the time we do, door 3 won't be the scary one. So pick one, right now. Before you know anything about how any of this works, which of the 3 do you think we're in? Put it in the comments. I want to see whether it survives the next 10 minutes. Because the strange part is that you can build this thing yourself, out of a video game. A philosopher called Brian Weatherson wanted to show what was wrong with all of it. So he opened The Sims. Will Wright's game. You build a neighborhood, you fill it with little people, and you watch them get on with it. No score, no way to win, you just make them. Here's what he noticed. One player makes a lot of Sims. Millions of people played that game. Do the multiplication, and it doesn't take long before the little people outnumber us. Badly. Now, grant one thing. Just grant it. He did. He didn't even argue for it. Grant that as those little people get complicated enough, at some point, something starts happening in there. The second you grant that, it stops being a thought experiment. It's counting. But The Sims is a game. Little people who want a sandwich. Why would that ever scale up to something that could hold a person? Because of the numbers in Bostrom's paper. And they're hard to sit with. Take a computer the size of a sugar cube. Somebody had already put that design on paper by the time he wrote this. It runs about 10 to the 21 operations every second. A 1 followed by 21 zeros. For scale, Your brain runs somewhere between 10 to the 14 and 10 to the 17. So that sugar cube is doing the work of somewhere between 10,000 and 10 million human brains at the same time, in something you could lose down the back of a sofa. Now scale it up, a machine with the mass of a planet. Here's his estimate. A single computer like that could simulate the entire mental history of the human species, every person who has ever lived, every experience any of them ever had, all of it, from the beginning, using less than 1/1,000,000th of what it's got. For 1 second. 1 second. 1/1,000,000th. And that's the engine of this whole thing. If these are possible at all, they're cheap. Absurdly, catastrophically cheap. Nobody builds one of anything that cheap. There's one step left, and almost everyone walks straight past it. The whole argument turns on it. Knowing what most people are doesn't tell you what you are. Bostrom knows that's the weak point, so he gives you an analogy, and it's a good one. Say I tell you that 60% of human beings carry a particular stretch of DNA. It's junk. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change your eyes or your health or your personality. There is nothing about you ever that would reveal whether you have it. 60% have it. You've never been tested. What should you believe about yourself? 0.6. Obviously, you've got nothing else to go on. Now swap carrying that DNA for living in a simulation and run it again. Same shape, same answer. And it only works because there is genuinely nothing to go on. If any part of your experience could tell the difference, the whole thing falls apart. So that's the machine. 3 doors and a piece of reasoning that walks you up to them. There's just one problem with it. A real one. A mistake in the counting. And the person who found it was Bostrom. 8 years after publishing, he came back with a mathematician. Short paper. And the section heading is 2 words. The bug. That's the heading they gave it. The whole thing comes down to one letter written twice. Call it H. It's the number of people who live in a civilization before it gets advanced. And in the argument, that letter appears twice. Once on top, once on the bottom. For 8 years, everybody who read it assumed those 2 H's were the same number. They're not. The H on top counts people in civilizations that go on to build simulated worlds. The H on the bottom counts people in civilizations that never do. Nothing says those are the same population. Nothing ever said it. And here's how bad that gets. And watch what your own head does with this one. It's their example, by the way, not something I've cooked up. 99 civilizations reach the advanced stage. Every single one of them builds simulated worlds. 100%, no exceptions. And one civilization doesn't make it. Just one. But that one is enormous, and it lasts a very, very long time. Now count the people with me. 99% of civilizations succeeded. All of the survivors ran simulations, and 99% of everyone who has ever lived a real life. All 3 doors shut at the same time, which is exactly what the argument says cannot happen. As published, it didn't work, so they fixed it. Twice. 2 separate repairs, and each one quietly adds an assumption the original didn't, which is the honest way to fix an argument. You don't patch it and hope nobody notices. You show people the new price. And there was a 3rd repair sitting right there. They looked at it and turned it down because it leaned on another piece of reasoning they didn't trust enough to build on. 2 people holding a broken argument, refusing the shortcut that wasn't solid enough. Hold that image for about 90 seconds, because the people quoting this argument were a great deal less careful. Go back to Weatherson, the man with the video game. He wrote that paper to attack the argument. And inside it, he accepts the conclusion. He thinks the ratio really does end up enormous. His problem is only the step afterwards. Bostrom answered him. And in that answer, he states flatly that he does not accept door number 3, only at least one of these. So the man attacking it believes it, the man who built it doesn't. Then it gets worse. Another philosopher wrote an objection and quoted Bostrom to make his case. The quote is wrong. Bostrom wrote that simulated civilizations may run simulations of their own. The objection quotes him saying they will. One verb and a maybe becomes a certainty. The exact mistake the entire internet makes with this, made by a man whose job was to read it properly. Bostrom's reply names it in 3 words. He misquotes me. And the first headline that ever sold the loud version, he wrote it the same year. A piece on his own argument for a wider audience, and the title promised that the odds you're living in a matrix are quite high. The article underneath it says it shows nothing of the kind. So if you've been carrying the loud version of this around in your head, the confident one, the one that sounds like maths, you're in very good company. It's the same version the people paid to get it right were carrying. There was never a version of this where you were supposed to catch it. Which is also why almost nobody stops to ask what people even mean when they call the universe a computer. It gets said constantly. It is not the same claim as being run by one, not even close. But that's a whole other door. So, 3 doors. You picked one about 10 minutes ago. Let's open them properly. Door 1. Almost no civilization ever reaches that stage, ours included, and nearly every other one out there. And be careful with this one, because it isn't we all die next Tuesday. Bostrom's explicit about that. Stalling counts. Hitting a ceiling counts. Getting comfortable and staying exactly where you are, forever, counts. So picture what that actually looks like from the inside. It doesn't look like an apocalypse. There's no moment. Nobody announces it. A civilization gets rich, gets clever, gets close, and then just doesn't get any further. The next thing takes a little longer than the last thing did, then longer. Then it stops being worth trying. And everybody carries on comfortably for a very long time in a world that never gets any bigger. That's door 1. Not fire. A ceiling nobody can see. And every civilization that ever hit it presumably thought it was doing fine, right up until it wasn't going anywhere. Something stops everybody, everywhere, every single time. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows how far in front of us it is. And you are standing inside a civilization that hasn't got there yet, which means either we are the first ones through, or it is still ahead. Door 2. They make it, and then almost none of them build these worlds. And that takes something very specific. Bostrom spells it out. Not one advanced society, anywhere, can still contain one single wealthy, free, curious person who wants to try it. Not one. Across billions of years, in civilizations that never spoke to each other, that never compared notes, and that all arrive at the same answer anyway. Which leaves the question I genuinely can't get out of my head. And honestly, it's the reason I wanted to do this one. What did every single one of them work out that we haven't? Door 3. You're in one. And notice how little that actually tells you. It doesn't tell you whether the person sitting next to you is in one too. It doesn't tell you what happens to you when it stops. It only tells you where you are. And this is where he says something people never quote. In that same paper, he writes that we may hope door 3 is true. Hope. Because if we're inside a simulation, then somebody built it. Somebody got all the way there. Door 3 is the only one of the 3 that comes with proof that it can be done. So there it is. The frightening one was the hopeful one all along. Except, he doesn't stop there. He adds one more line and it takes it all back. If running these things is expensive enough that whoever runs them shuts them down before they get too advanced, then our best hope is door 2. Door 2. The one where everybody makes it and everybody decides never to do this. That's the menu. And notice what just happened to the good news. It moved. Depending on one assumption nobody can check, the door you should be hoping for is a different door. You've spent this entire video looking for the one that isn't terrible. So did he. He got as far as, it depends whether they switch us off. So, the door you picked 10 minutes ago, still the same one? Tell me if it moved. And subscribe, because I've only opened these 3 doors. I haven't been inside any of them. Because the worst of it came 6 years later. 6 years after publishing all of this, Bostrom wrote a sentence you have almost certainly never seen anyone quote. He was clearing up what his argument does and doesn't show, and then, almost in passing, in fact, I believe that we are probably not simulated. 2009. The man who built the most famous argument about simulation ever written thought we probably weren't in one. Years later, on his own website, the same man calls it a substantial probability, and this time he refuses to put a number on it at all. A number, he says, would give a false sense of precision. 2009? Probably not. Now, substantial. And I'm not telling you how substantial. Nothing settled it in between. No experiment, no discovery, nothing you could point to. Just a man arguing with himself for 20 years in public about the thing he built. And on that same page, he gets asked whether we should try to test this, whether we should go looking for the edges of the world. He says no. Partly because he doesn't think the experiments would work, and partly because if somebody really is running this, finding out might be exactly the thing that makes them stop. Because that's the third thing the director can do. He can edit what you remember. He can rewind a few seconds and play it again, and he can stop.